Welcome back to Severe MMA for the final installment of our Ultimate Fighter Season 32 recap show. My name, as always, is Theo Lander. It's a pleasure to be joining with you a little bit later than usual. Unfortunately, we had another ESPN Plus nightmare, as I would like to call it. This was delayed until 10:25 on the East Coast for our American listeners due to the Little League World Series running a bit overtime. Now, again, that's something that's on linear ESPN. That makes sense. The Ultimate Fighter is not. So I don't know why they keep delaying this thing. It makes no sense to me. If you're on a cable channel, obviously there's things that run over, so you have to delay, whatever. ESPN Plus has like 20 streams running at the same time. Like if you ever go there on a Saturday and like a college football Saturday and see how many games they have playing in all different levels of college, there's like 30, 35 games on there every single day. So I don't understand why they have to make space in some places, why there's stuff overrunning onto each other when you're on ESPN plus a streaming service, not cable channels. It's neither here nor there, and honestly, most of you probably didn't have that experience because you're not watching from America, but it is part of the story, so I am going to address it. But enough of that. We'll just get into the actual episode itself. Um, Really not a lot of stuff going on outside of the fight. We did have a fight that went the full distance, so there wasn't really enough time to build up a lot of stuff before then. But it was a little bit busy given the small amount of time that we did have with the fighters. So we open up with Giga, who is training for the semifinal. He's got to deal with the possibility of not being able to fight due to this injury. He's got this jaw fracture that's sort of lingering from his previous fight on the tournament. So he's trying to train as much as he can, but Shevchenko's trying to reel him back. She's talking to the camera about how important it is that he's able to just get to the fight and stay healthy. So she's trying to do everything she can and make sure he's able to do that. So yeah, he says that he's not really concerned about his health, thinks he's going to be able to fight no problem, doesn't plan on going to the hospital, but says someone's going to the hospital after his fight. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. He then eventually gets his chance soon after to do the whole FaceTiming home thing. He FaceTimes his sister Evelyn. Good stuff there. I'm not going to repeat the same things from the past episode about how their family supports them and blah, blah, blah. This all the same for most of these guys. And really, Jigen and Evelyn don't really get into anything interesting, to be honest with you. So we'll just skip right over to Myron, who then FaceTimes his wife. Again, pretty doesn't neither of these guys got really too emotional. They didn't really get into anything too deep. But Myron did say that it's the best 15 minutes of the season for him. Both these guys, of course, like everyone in the house, without their phone, no contact. It's good to have that, especially in a moment where they're very vulnerable going into a fight. So all good stuff there. Love to see them getting that opportunity to call back home. So we're now going to cut over to Myron Santos, who's preparing for the semifinal as well on his end. His challenge, opposite Giga, is he's got to prepare for 3 different opponents. Obviously, Giga's impending medical issues could cause him to pull out of that fight, so he might not be available. There is also the possibility of Guillermo Torres stepping up, as well as our guy Edwin. I'm not sure why they have 2 people, but Edwin Cooper and Guillermo Torres are both selected. And like we said in the previous episode, the Nevada State Athletic Commission is going to have them both weigh in, and then they'll decide if Giga isn't ready to go. They'll decide right then and there who the alternate is going to be. So I guess they're doing it just in case one of those guys can't make weight. Maybe there was questions about, will this guy be able to go? Maybe to have a second one ready to go just in case because it's on short notice and they've been out of competition technically because they were out of the tournament. Maybe something like that, but it's still a little bit strange to me that they're having 2 guys and they're not explicitly saying why when that's really not the standard. So yeah, we're really just talking about Myron here having to prepare for 3 guys. He says that preparing for 3 opponents is crazy to him. He admits it's a big challenge, but one that he's, at the end of the day, ready for. So I think Myron has the right mindset, but it's hard to ask these athletes not to be a little bit thrown off when they get a task like that to prepare for three guys, especially for at this point what's kind of the biggest fight of his life. It's a pretty tall task for someone to handle there, but I think Myron does everything right there in that scenario. He does go with that sort of pressure. The first commercial break of this, again, this is going to be another ESPN commentary, but it ends very abruptly, and so like we sort of like fade away from the black to go back to the episode, and they're like already in the middle of a conversation, so it's clear that we definitely missed something. I don't know if ESPN was cutting some of the episode for time or not at this point. Again, not on linear ESPN, so there's no need for that. But it definitely everything was thrown off with the streaming of the episode, and anyone listening in America knows what I'm talking about. It's just ridiculous. It's the second time it's happened this season. There's been no explanation, no nothing, and I don't think there ever will be. But, anyways, since we're into the episode, we may as well talk about it. Giga ends up weighing in 145, no problem for him at all. Myron Santos hits the scale at 148 pounds, which technically they have the 146 limit, so it's 2 pounds over. He gets an additional hour to cut, which is pretty standard in Nevada. So what they do is they walk out of the Apex, they walk across the little side street to the Performance Institute, where they'll finish the weight cut. They get him wrapped up in the foil. They have him go in the sauna. They do everything. He ends up walking back into the Apex through the hallway, that big hallway with all the Ultimate Fighter jerseys on it. With a minute left, he barely makes on the scale in time. And he comes back and he's 146 and a half pounds. So he's a half pound over. They keep repeating in the episode, like, it's 200 grams, that's nothing. So Myron is damn near panicking at this point. How could you not? Says he's willing to cut his hair. So he's getting ready to get the buzzers out to just cut the hair off so he can make weight. Giga stops him, says he doesn't have to do that. Says it's fine. He can fight a half pound over. He doesn't care. Myron apologizes right away. He said word for word, he said, I was unprofessional and I'm sorry. So it's great to see him take that kind of accountability, but you know, it's hard because Myron also, you have to understand, is like the guy who has the biggest cut in the house. So for that guy in particular to make that weight back to back in consecutive weeks is a very tough thing to do. So I mean, if you're going to give anyone in the house a little bit of elbow room, I think it would be Myron Santos. He got within a half pound. It's really not going to make that big of a difference when the fight comes down to it. So I thought it was a great move by Giga to say, don't cut your hair. Don't want to do that to you. We can just fight. So all good news there. Then, of course, our alternates, Guillermo Torres and Edwin Cooper. They both make weight, no problem at all. And then we get to fight day. Now, this is the interesting part. Giga does not get medically cleared on fight day. Now, you might be saying to yourself, that's weird. Didn't they check his medicals the day before at the weigh-ins? That they did. That they did. And the doctors apparently had to, presumably from the explanation that we got from the Nevada State Athletic Commission, they had to just think about it. They had to analyze the data and then come back to him after the checkup. So I guess they needed a night to sleep on it. And then they came in the next morning, right when he shows up to fight, and says, hey, by the way, you're not fighting. Feels like something you could have told him the day before, because when the medical checkup happens, you have the information there, that they're not waiting for stuff to come in after. Even if they are, why do you have the guy wake up the next morning, be fully prepared to fight, show up at the Apex as he's getting ready to walk out and just tell him, oh, by the way, that's off. That's not happening. That made no sense to me. And even I'll give Shevchenko credit because she even stood her ground and was like, why didn't we know yesterday? And they just kind of were like, they needed time to analyze. It's just a weird excuse. I don't know why they would do that to him. Giga's obviously crushed. He keeps saying, my dream is done. My dream is done. God came and took my dream away from me. He feels so bad for the guy. Obviously, we did see some news broke today as well that he is going to have a shot in the UFC despite that. So his dream is definitely not over. But obviously, in that moment, you're going to feel like the world is crashing down on you. So yeah, Giga is not fighting. So in comes Guillermo Torres. He gets called up to fight. We talked to Edwin Cooper for a slight second here. He says he's very upset. Feels like they had him weigh in for no reason. I I get that. It feels like, based on what he said, that they weren't very open with him at all about why they had two alternates weighing in for this. So, the questions continue to pile up on how the end of this season was organized. But we're just gonna kick into the fight here real quick. It did go the full 3 rounds. Um, this whole fight was just a Myron Santos coming out party. I mean, not to say he didn't look great in his first fight on the tournament. Man, he really showed the distance between him and the competition here against Guillermo Torres. Tough to say what version of Torres we got in this one because we don't know. They said he was still training, but what does that really mean once you're out of competition for the tournament? Like, what version of Torres is really going to be showing up in there? I thought that he did get tired a little bit early, like halfway through the second round. I started noticing some significant fatigue off of him. Tough to say how much of that plays a factor or not. But then you also got to look on the other side. Marion Santos is a guy who didn't really game plan for Guillermo Torres. He had to prepare for 3 different guys, so he kind of admits that he threw strategy out the window. So come fight day, all of a sudden he's getting ready to walk it back and he gets pulled. By the way, it's not Giga, it's going to be Guillermo Torres. So challenges for both guys on both sides here heading into this fight. But as far as round one is concerned, Myron to me looks like the much better kicker, both offensively and defensively. He's landing those leg kicks hard and at will. I think he checked every single leg kick that Guillermo threw him as well in this opening round too. So yeah, he really had that going on. Great teep kicks as well. He then rocks Torres with a left hook against the cage. Doesn't get too crazy. He definitely stumbled him for a little bit, but he doesn't rush. Picks his shots very well and just is able to control the fight heading forward after that point. He has some good strike clinches or clinch strikes as well after that, but it also sort of allows for this opening for Torres to shoot in a takedown. Torres, and this is going to be a recurring theme throughout the fight, is not able to get the takedown, but he does use that opportunity to take a break to pin Myron against the cage and gets a bit of resting out. Throw some very small shots here that doesn't really do anything. But then Myron sort of frames out. He spins out of this clinch exchange against the fence very beautifully. The thing about Myron Santos is he's not like the fastest guy or not the toughest guy, not the strongest guy, but he is very technically sound. Like it feels like he does things with perfect technique. He's a very aesthetically pleasing, kicker to watch. He's also got excellent counter striking. It felt like his timing specifically with these strikes he was landing right after Torres enters range or is on the end of his own punch. Myron always is timing those perfectly, and he's sneaking in some really good shots. Guillermo does end up getting a takedown to end the round, but he doesn't really do anything with it. So it's an easy 10-9 for Myron Santos, in my opinion there. Not necessarily one-way traffic, but when it got significant, Myron was winning all those exchanges. So a good first round from him. Round two begins. And in the beginning part, Guillermo charges forward with a combination which was begun by a Superman punch. Doesn't land anything in that exchange, but it shows he's desperate to force the action because he realizes he's in a slow-paced fight. So you got to score something to be able to win these rounds. And he also realizes that he's losing the fight too. So he's only got 2 rounds to work. If he's got to win both of these rounds, he wants to start off the second round with something that can land early so he can score and at least still salvage the opportunity to win on the scorecard. So, yeah, definitely showed some desperation there. Myron then tries to sort of match his energy and throws a big flying knee, which is a bit ill-advised as he misses, which causes him to give up a single leg. Not really anything happening on the ground with that takedown, unfortunately. So Torres then is able to land this massive overhand right from this sort of semi-single leg takedown position, swarms Myron, some really good body shots against the cage, sells out for a takedown once again, is not able to get it. He's clearly choosing his spots to explode here. Again, slow-paced fighter, you can kind of do that. If you remember the Adesanya Romero fight, like Romero would be ice cold still, and then at random moments would explode and try to take Izzy's head off with everything he had. Not saying it's that extreme of a circumstance. There's definitely action happening in this fight the entire time. It's just a lot slower. But that's sort of the picture I'm trying to paint here is that, Guillermo is not really trying to play the game and point fight with him the whole time. He's clearly, all right, I'm going to pick my spots to explode, hopefully score enough effective striking here to land on the judges' scorecards, and then he can salvage rounds 2 and 3 for himself. It's not going his way, but I commend the effort. I think it's an all right strategy. Um, he has a decent mouse under his left eye as well. At this point, Santos staying very busy with the kicks. Lovely jab as well, backing him up all over the cage. It's another easy 10-9 for Santos for me at this point. So if Guillermo wants to win this fight, he's got to get a finish going into the third round, which we open up the third round with him selling out for yet another takedown against the fence. He can't get it, but he does get some decent body work in. He does land some decent strikes during that process. He's definitely fading a lot more noticeably now. Again, like I said earlier, sort of halfway through the fight, you can start to notice this stuff, but round 3 begins and it is very, very visible. He's now throwing these big 4-punch combinations. Halfway through the round, essentially, they're both doing this. Really not kicking as much as they were in the opening 2 rounds. They're sort of just throwing that out for strict boxing now. But they're both landing these punches at essentially full power or however much power they have left at this point in the fight. So it's not like you could say Myron Santos was just sitting on the lead and sort of on his bike trying to run out the clock. No, he was in there exchanging with a guy, Guillermo Torres, who had nothing to lose, which is the most dangerous version of a fighter you could have in front of you. So credit to Santos there. He lands at a higher clip even to finish the round and finish the fight. It's another round that I have to score for Myron Santos. I think he won that one 30-27. Seems like Dana agreed with me afterwards in his assessment of the fight. So Myron Santos advances to the Ultimate Fighter Season 32 finale, which will take place next week at the Apex, apparently. The Ultimate Fighter Season 32 finales, they used to mean something. Last year, they had them take place in beautiful Boston City. I guess these guys, although they told us it was the most international group, the most talented group, some of the best fights we've ever seen, they must have thought they weren't good enough to be in an arena. I don't know. Maybe that's just the UFC in 2024. But yeah, it looks like he's going to face Con Offley in the featherweight finale. And then in the middleweight finale, we're going to have fan favorite Robert Valentin, who is coming off of a victory over Patty McCory, face off against D1 All-American wrestler Ryan Loader. So going to be interesting matchups on both sides. I think Con Offley and Myron Santos is like just I don't know if you guys know what Beyblades are over in Europe. I don't know if they made it over there, but they're just like these little spinning tops, almost like a dreidel that you just throw in there, and it's like you have this little bowl, and like the Beyblades will just smack into each other, like dreidels just clashing into each other. That's what I imagine that fight being like, just a bunch of guys spinning around, throwing crazy strikes, and doing a lot of damage. So I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup there. Robert Valentin versus Ryan Loader. That's another great fight as well. We know Ryan Loader wants to do. I think Robert Valentin is a rare combination of a guy who is like the perfect anti-wrestler, really good defensive grappling, can keep a fight standing, and can also discourage a wrestler from shooting on him while also keeping the fight style entertaining. So I know sometimes like there's a bit of like consumers fatigue with people saying, I'm tired of seeing striker versus wrestler. I know how that ends. Robert Valentin is not the guy who's going to go out there and get, mounted by Ryan Loader and be on his back for 3 rounds. Like that's not how that fight's going to go. Robert Valentin's going to challenge Ryan Loader. He's going to make him think twice about shooting on him. He's probably going to cut him open at one point. And yeah, I just can't wait to see that guy on an actual UFC card. Again, it's in the Apex, unfortunately, so we're not going to be able to feed off the energy of the crowd. But man, could you imagine Robert Valentin in front of like a sold out, legit UFC pay-per-view crowd? That's why these fights need to be on these big cards. That's why the finale has to feel like a finale and not a throwaway on a random ESPN plus Apex card that no one's going to be paying attention to. So, what do I know? I don't run the UFC, but yeah, I mean, honestly, nothing else of note really happened here. That was really about it for the episode. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. They also announced, well, I guess they didn't announce it, but they did just mention it because it's been public knowledge for a while that Shevchenko and Grasso were going to tie up the trilogy at the Sphere. That's going to be on September 14th. So a little bit less than a month afterwards, or after the actual finales take place at the Apex. So I don't hate the scheduling of that. I think it makes sense to have them close enough together. But if you're not going to be able to put the actual finales on the Sphere card because it's too expensive and you can only have X amount and all these moving parts of the Sphere card, I get it. We don't need it to be at the Apex, though. I think that's the message. But yeah, overall, it was a great episode of The Ultimate Fighter. Season 32 was a great one. A lot of great talent in the house. Patty McCory, I think he's going to bounce back. We're already seeing guys like Giga and Nate Fletcher as well, who are not even going to be in the finales. They've already gotten opportunities to be in the UFC post show. So maybe Patty McCoy is one of those guys who could get the call. Maybe Omran Shaban's another guy who could get that call as well. I thought he looked good on the season as well. But yeah, that about wraps it up for the Ultimate Fighter Season 32 recap on Severe MMA. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way along when it was Ian and I to start, all the way up until now, I thank you a lot. That means a lot to us here. That's it for the season. I mean, we might do some recaps for the finales, maybe for the coaches fight. Who knows? We got to get back and figure out the scheduling for that. But it has been a pleasure to recap the show with you. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good rest of the week.